The last couple of days haven't seen much in the way of actual Overwatch League moves or trades, so after receiving some requests, I posed a question on my last video as to whether I should cover some of the speculation that's been swirling around. It appears that many of you would like me to, so that's what I've decided to discuss today. Before I get into it though, I do want to make it very clear at the start that everything I'll be mentioning in this video is just rumour and speculation right now. None of these moves have been officially confirmed by any of the teams, and it's crucially important to remember that it's very possible they could end up falling through or just being wrong. Also, I'll leave links in the description below if you want to see these reports for yourself. That said, let's not delay any further and instead get straight into it, beginning with the massive report from Halo yesterday that Moth is expected to sign with the LA Gladiators. If true, this fascinating move would see one of the best main supports in the league leave our current Overwatch League champions to move to a Gladiators side that has struggled to really push on from a middle of the pack position over the past few years. It would be a real surprise to see the Shock take this action, given how important and dependable Moth has been to their success in 2019 and 2020. But with San Francisco releasing Rascal last week, and also potentially letting players like Super and Violet become free agents soon as well, there is perhaps a suggestion financially they have to make some changes ahead of next season. It's certainly a story to keep an eye on throughout this off-season, as if finances aren't playing any part, then you do have to wonder why Krusty is so willing to part with arguably some of his most important players, even if the meta at times this season didn't necessarily play to their specific strengths, although it might even just be the case of letting these players find more consistent starting spots on other teams. But returning to Moth himself, and looking at his possible move to the Gladiators, it's a proposition that could really work out nicely for both parties involved. The Gladiators obviously recruit one of the best players at the main support position, which could help stabilise a role that, although had been strong for many years, had perhaps become a little unreliable towards the end of 2020 after a decline in performance from Big Goose. As for Moth, by joining the Gladiators he would have the chance to really emphasise just how great of a main support he is, with his displays now having a greater chance of being significantly recognised on an arguably weaker team, rather than him being sometimes viewed as just another component of San Francisco's dominance. Furthermore, another rumour has suggested that Shu could be a flex support player that the Gladiators are looking to sign, potentially setting up a support pairing of Moth and Shu that certainly sounds exciting on paper. I think many people don't always recognise how great of a player Shu is, having often been overshadowed in terms of attention on the charge by players like Happy, Eileen and more recently Krong. Over these past 2 years however, and even before that in Contenders, he's demonstrated that he's a fantastic flex support player, with Ana in particular impressing me a lot. I was very surprised to see him become a free agent this offseason with his Guangzhou contract expiring, and for my money he's one of the best free agents available at the support position. So if he does indeed sign with the Gladiators, then I think they will have made a massive upgrade on their support line, especially in light of the retirements of Big Goose and Shaz. I believe it's also important to mention that Shu has had previous experience playing on a mixed roster, with his time in Contenders split between periods on Flash Lux and Metro Athena initially in Korea, before joining the North American teams Toronto Esports and Uprising Academy. It's also curious to mention that he has in fact been a teammate of Moth's on Toronto Esports, although before we get too ahead of ourselves, this was just for about 10 days. Yiska did mention that the Gladiators plan to make some big moves this off-season, and if they do bring in these two players, that certainly wouldn't be an understatement. Moth and Shu, alongside the return of Birdering, Kevster and Space, would look like a very juicy roster on paper, and a couple more pieces, such as former teammates Nero or Super, could easily position the Gladiators as a real top contender in 2021. Even if these moves sound surprising, I actually get the sense they are more likely to happen than not, and whilst it's still just speculation for now, I'm looking forward to seeing if these are a couple of deals that do in fact get over the line in coming weeks. Moving now on to the New York Excelsior, they have also been the subject of some rumour and speculation in recent days, with Halo first of all tweeting out that according to his sources, the New York Excelsior have signed the O2 Blast main tank, Yakpung. Some of you may recognise Yakpung's name, having been a former member of the Toronto Defiant in 2019. But before you jump to conclusions that this is an odd pickup, with Yakpung underwhelming during that time, I'd urge you to watch some of his play recently on O2 Blast this year, where he has massively flourished and impressed. As well as helping O2 Blast to a very successful first half of 2020, he's also shown a great level of improvement and development similar to players like Sado, Fearless and Bembest, now showing a strong level of quality across all his main tank heroes. I personally would rate him slightly below other Korean contenders main tanks like Mag or Muse, but by no means do I think he would be a bad pickup, and I'm curious to see if he could return to the Overwatch League next season with a vengeance, just as we saw from Fearless this year. However, alongside this rumour that New York will acquire Yakpung, it appears that Mano could be traded from the team. This is a trade that, if true, I'm sure would be a great shock to a number of people, not least the Excelsior fans. Whilst New York have not achieved the success we've expected from them over the past 2 seasons, few would point their finger at Mano being the problem, having been one of the Excelsior's more consistent and reliable performers during that time. Many still consider him a top-level main tank at the Overwatch League level, and even I would struggle to argue that Yakpung is a stronger player than him right now, making this possible decision to trade Mano one that's difficult to really wrap your head around. What I think this does show, however, if Mano is eventually traded, the 2021 is really going to see a lot of major changes from quite a few teams, with many having to take decisions financially, or instead looking to make drastic changes after consistent underwhelming performances. So I'm fascinated to see whether these 2 moves pan out, with Mano having the potential to now join teams like the Gladiators or Charge for instance. Both I think would be very interesting fits for next season. Lastly, in terms of speculation going around, it appears that MCD could be signing with the Hangzhou Spark, whilst the Houston Outlaws might be leading the race to sign Piggy. Firstly, with MCD to the Spark, this seems to be an interesting development in his off-season, as just a week ago it actually seemed like he could be heading to Dallas to reunite with his former head coach Rush from Element Mystic. Now though, potentially Hangzhou are the ones who have signed MCD, which is a team I didn't exactly expect to come calling for him. I don't say this in any way to disrespect MCD, who I think is a solid pickup, but it's hard to judge him up against Coldest, who I initially expected the Spark to throw their weight behind for 2021. If there is a double flex support meta, then I think Hangzhou could have a nice duo available to them, but MCD's potential signing makes it debatable as to who will be the full-time starter between him and Coldest. From what I have seen from the pair, I'm actually inclined to lean towards Coldest, but it seems to me that the two will have to battle each other for a starting spot, which wasn't a path I expected the Spark to head down this off-season. I felt that this team really needs to make some major upgrades if they wanted to seriously push on and get over that middle of the pack hump they found themselves in last year. And whilst I am curious to see how MCD fares if he is in fact picked up, I'm not sure he's a signing that makes a great deal of change to the Spark's overall strength and quality. As for Houston leading the race for Piggy, this I think would be an interesting partnership should it happen. For too long I think players on Talent Esports have been forgotten about when discussing exciting contenders' talent, and having shown that they can compete amongst the Korean contenders sites after dominating the Pacific region, I'm really happy to see interest in their players increase. In terms of Piggy though, he was a strong off-tank performer for the team in 2020, and could be a really good player to develop at the Overwatch League level, especially if under the strict guidance of Junkbuck and Harsha. If I did have any apprehensions though, I do think some of his off-tank heroes are slightly weaker than his impressive Zarya, and I wouldn't say he's an upgrade over Meko. That said, if this does come to fruition, I really like the impression I'm getting from the Outlaws, that they are looking to explore and scout upcoming contenders' talent. And whilst it might not be a big name that the fans are hoping for, it's an approach I'm very curious to see if Houston follow through on this off-season, as they look to improve ahead of 2021. In terms of a development that actually seems to dispel a rumour though, Rascal yesterday put out a tweet that he is looking for a team, and is open to offers. A week ago when he said farewell to the San Francisco Shock, there was some speculation going around that Rascal was considering retirement from professional Overwatch, after a few comments on his stream. However, the fact that after a week he has posted this LFT tweet suggests to me, at least for now, that Rascal will not be retiring, and most likely will be joining a new team for 2021. I said in my last video that he'd be a brilliant signing for nearly every other team in the Overwatch League, so I'm really excited to see where he takes his talents for next year, especially as I reckon he could be a key piece if recruited on a couple of sites to actually make them a greater threat next year than the Shock themselves. I also just want to remind everyone to keep an eye on Contenders EU and NA over the next month or so, as teams might be waiting until the final November tournament is played out before actually picking up some of the players, looking particularly at the British Hurricane in regards to that. Once again though, that's all I have for now, although tomorrow I will be setting aside a specific video on the Paris Eternal unless some major news drops tonight. Now though, as usual, I want to know what you think of these potential moves down in the comments below. Do you like them? Do you even think they'll happen? Anyways, if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, or follow me on Twitter or my Discord. Until next time though, I want to say a big thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.